The year 2025 is definitely coming to an end, and I thought it would be a good occasion to go over my top 10 wildlife photos of the year. And I want to talk a bit about them, about how I took these images, which kind of camera settings I used, and most importantly, to give you some tips of how you can achieve this image or what was important in that moment to capture it exactly like that. I deliberately only selected 10 pictures out of Europe for locations that I reached either via electric car, train, or even by foot just outside of my apartment in Zurich. The first image shows a wide-winged snowfinch in flight, and I have been trying for several years to get a good flight shot of that one, and I'm happy that I finally managed. And it was not very easy because you can see there is a lot of snow in the background, which I think makes the image really stand out and makes it a bit more special, but it also made it a bit harder, especially for the autofocus. And it also meant that I needed to use a shorter focal length. You can see I was at 135 millimeters. Just because if I would try to get a similar shot with 600 millimeters at a bigger distance, there would be too much like blurry snow in between the camera and the snowfinch, and this would just mean that there is this whitish layer in front which kind of reduces the colors, the contrast, and also the detail in the feathers of the snowfinch. So I needed to go to a location where the snowfinch were not too shy, and snowfinches are highly adapted to basically to surviving in the mountains the whole year. However, they still come sometimes to some like Alpine restaurants where people go skiing and have some sandwich or other lunch. And sometimes the snowfinches hope that they might find a few bread crumbles or something around. And in this situation, I gave the snowfinch a few sunflower seeds, like normal bird food, because this really helps in some situations, because taking flight shots is not always easy, but taking flight shots of small passerines is most of the time very hard, and especially if you have snow in the background, it's very, very hard. So just going to a location where you know they come a bit more often definitely helps here. The next photo shows a couple of mallards, a very common species here in Central Europe, but I wanted to photograph them in a bit a different way. I mean, it's not really revolutionary. I've seen similar pictures before, but still I had this image idea in my mind, and I'm happy that in the end it worked as I wanted. So my goal was to go to a waterfall where I knew that the mallards occurred and were looking for food. And then I was hoping that they stand on some rocks, ideally like here, some mossy rocks, because I really like the green that it gives to the image. And then hoping that they would stand still long enough that I can work with a longer shutter speed so that the water starts to get a bit flow or like get a bit more blurry. And I'm really happy with the end result. It was not very easy to get an image where both of them were standing still, where they were more or less in the same focal plane. Of course, I tried to stop down here, as you can see, to f11, which helped a bit. And then I was just taking a lot of shots to get the proper one. It also helped to go during winter. First of all, that's when the mallards are or the male mallard is in the breeding plumage, which looks much better. And the second thing is, if you try this in May or June, like late spring, you have all the snow melt from the mountains, which means there is more water and also more sediments in the water. And then you don't get this nice bluish color. You get more rather ugly brownish color, in my opinion. Another very common species on lakes and rivers in Europe is the mute swan. And I took this picture in a floating height, and I went in there in the afternoon, and it was an overcast day, so I thought it would be good to take some pictures. But then you can imagine what happens after like 30 minutes that I'm in the height. It starts getting sunny, and I'm like, it's too harsh light at the moment. And to make matters worse, I was actually shooting against the sun. However, then I spotted 2 or 3 mute swans swimming around on the other side of the lake. And I decided to give it a go, because since I was shooting backlit and there were some trees in the background, you can see that the background is quite dark because these trees were providing some shadow. And on the other hand, the mute swan was a bit closer to me, so I got hit by the direct sunlight, and especially on the feathers of the wings, you can see how the sunlight is kind of pushing through and making the image glow a bit. In the foreground there were some, I think it was some pollen from the trees, but I'm not 100% sure, but some small particles that caused kind of these nice bokeh effects. And then I decided to just go for a vertical shoot. And I know with these kind of light situations I don't get much very nice colors, but it didn't matter at this point. For this image I think it works perfectly fine without having a lot of colors, and I even reduced the saturation a little bit in post. Quite different to the next image, which shows a dipper, and here I really love the bluish tone of the image, and I actually went several times to the location and only once did I get so bluish colors. I'm still not sure why, because my white balance setting was the same, I checked that. So I went there for the first time and just saw the dipper once or twice, and I took some, let's say, more normal shots in the river. And then I had the idea to take a picture of the dipper in front of the waterfall. Again, not a groundbreaking idea, but I have not managed to take such a picture so far. And I tried, but the dipper was a bit too shy. When I was there, it didn't like to land on the rock so much. So what I decided is to come back another time and give it another shot with just putting the camera on a tripod and then putting the interval timer that it takes one image each second. I let the camera be there for like 2 hours and then came back, and this means I had around 8,000 images on my memory card, so it was a fun afternoon to sort them. But it was actually quite fast because in 99% of the time there was no dipper. In a few occasions it just looked in the other direction, which was not so cool because it kind of looked out of the image, but then I had 2 or 3 images where it was sitting perfectly there. I was very, very happy with the result here, and I deliberately chose a shorter focal length because I wanted to include more of the environment of this waterfall. I also stopped down the aperture a bit just to be on the safe side when it comes to the depth of field, because if the dipper would have sit a bit more to the right or a bit more to the left, it would have been slightly further away or closer to me. And additionally, I also wanted that the background is kind of as structured as possible, and the blur in the background comes from the movement, from the long shutter speed, and not from a large aperture. So yeah, very happy with this image. A month later or so, I went to the south. I went to southern France, and I really like this image of this barn swallow that I took there, because most of the barn swallow pictures I took so far were always in flight. And don't get me wrong, it's super cool to take pictures of them in flight. It's always a challenge, but I found that they are also very cute when they're just sitting on a branch, and this one really picked an amazing branch with these yellow lichens, and I tried to get a bit a lower angle and then shoot a bit more towards the higher part of a tree, basically, so that there was a bit of sky pushing through, and that's what you basically see with these more whitish elements in the background. And I think it just helped the image to get an overall very bright and light look. As you can also see, the wings are in a kind of, well, not in the resting position, they are slightly elevated, and that's a situation where I like to really use 40 frames per second, or however much my camera can offer, because if I just shoot with maybe 15 frames per second, I might miss that moment, and it might be that I have one where one wing is out but they're not symmetrical, which would still be a nice image, but I like the symmetry here. So how I configured my Canon cameras, and you can do it very similar with Sony and Nikon cameras, is basically just that with the press of one button I can switch to a higher frame rate. And especially on the R1 this is very easy, because I can do this with the AF on button, which kind of has 2 levels of pressing, and then I set it up in a way that half pressing just activates the autofocus area or the autofocus over a large area, and fully pressing it means autofocus still gets activated the same, but additionally it switches to 40 frames per second. So in German this would be another swallow, but in English I know it's a martin, a sand martin that I took in southern Germany. And I really liked the background there. It was where they were breeding. Don't worry, I was really trying not to disturb the birds. It was from a public street. And I like this kind of grayish with a bit of reddish color background out of focus. And immediately after arriving at the location, I saw the poppy seed or the poppy flowers that gave this nice red kind of elements, and my goal was to take a picture of a flying sand martin with these red flowers in the background, a bit blurry. And on this image I just liked basically everything. I like the position of the wings. It's again very symmetrical. The tail feathers are spread out nicely, and I like that the poppy flower is not just behind the swallow, but it's actually in the direction where it looks, which I think helps a bit with the image composition. Of course, situations like these are tricky for the autofocus. What helps here is to pre-focus. You can either do this manually, or what I recommend if I really spend 1 hour or 1.5 hours taking flight pictures is to basically set a focus preset and recall with both Canon or newer Canon and Nikon cameras. You can do this either on the lens if the lens supports it, but if the lens doesn't support this, the cool thing is with these new models you can also do it directly over the camera. You can just assign 2 buttons accordingly, and then whenever the camera loses the focus, you can quickly put it back to the, let's say, 20 meters or whatever you saved. On the R1 I'm using the FN1 and FN2 button that I can get easily reach with my middle finger and the ring finger. And if you also want to get more in focus images, then please have a look at my ebooks about autofocus on the Nikon Z and Canon EOS R cameras. I explain all the settings that are relevant for the autofocus, not just the one in the autofocus menu. I give ideas for different customizations of the buttons, and also explain in which weather situations or light situations I would change some settings to just get the most out of the scene. The next image was taken in Norway thanks to Terje Kolas, and I was trying to mainly photograph the Redshank, and suddenly I saw that there was a seagull coming by several times, and the Redshank was really unhappy about it. It was complaining because seagulls, they sometimes steal the eggs or even the chicks of other birds. So I guess the Redshank just wanted to get rid of this neighbor and tried to defend its territory, and this allowed me for some pretty cool flight shots. Now most of the time I was taking more stationary images of either the loons or the Redshank, and to keep the image, or to have the best possible image quality, I tried to keep the ISO a bit lower, which meant that I was not really ready for action. So I have my camera, this was the R5 Mark II in this instance, but it doesn't matter too much. I have it also set up in a way that with the press of one button I can switch between different shooting modes. And then I just press one button and it changes the autofocus characteristics, the ISO, the shutter speed, frame rate, and even more if I want, and this just allowed me to quickly switch to this situation and get a sharp image. The image of this black kite here is one that I actually took just 1.5 kilometers that way. So there is a small organic farm, and they were harvesting the wheat, and this was a great occasion because then all the mice and the grasshoppers and so on, they didn't have any place anymore to hide. And the red kites and black kites, they kind of knew this or saw this opportunity and went to hunt there, and I took the opportunity to take some pictures of them. And I was quite lucky that day, that in terms of the weather, because you see it's overcast, which is nice for giving a smooth background and also not having any problems in the rather dark parts of the wing, because once the sun hits from above they get really dark and it doesn't look good anymore in my opinion. And in the morning it was very sunny, so even though I was tempted to go there, I thought I will wait and hope that the weather turns a bit. And indeed in the afternoon a thunderstorm was approaching. I think 10 minutes or 15 minutes after this image I got a bit wet, but it gave me a nice opportunity, nice light, and then I just tried to get a low angle. And yeah, very happy to ended up with this shot. I also have some where they have a mouse or a grasshopper in their I don't think you say claws in English, but in their feet basically. However, I preferred this image because it was the moment where it was diving down, and I found the wing position and also the tail feathers a bit more interesting. I took this detail shot of an Alpine ibex during one of my workshops in July. And it was a bit a rainy and foggy day, and the problem with the fog is that, especially if you try to take pictures of larger animals, you cannot take pictures with 500 or 600 millimeters because you have a big shooting distance, and this means that you have too much fog in between you and the subject, which, similar as snow, just means that the image will look a bit dull. And fog is even worse actually, because the background will just look white or grayish and everything is just grayish. So there's a few options what you can do. Give up. Otherwise, you can take your wide angle lens, try to get close. But the problem here was that they were not standing in a very photogenic location. So there was like a fence, there was the hike signs of the hiking trail. So wide angle was not really a good option. And also if you have fog, often if it's really dense fog, the wide angle is also not an option because you don't have a nice background. So we went, or I kind of tried to encourage my participants to take their telezoom. Not a prime lens because you're not flexible enough and the minimum focus distance can be a problem, but rather taking a telezoom lens and trying to take some detail shots. And I went for this shot. I tried to take a picture of the eye because I really look like this this goat-like eye of the Alpine ibex. I like to have the ear, parts of the horn, and then one goal was that everything in the image should be part of the body of the ibex. So I didn't want to have any grass or rocks or anything in the background. So I needed to get a bit close, actually shoot slightly down. So I just went to a place where I was standing slightly higher. And then of course it took a lot of images or a lot of attempts until it worked. As you can see, I stopped down to f8 to have a bit more depth of field, that both the eye and the ear are sharp, and also that we see a bit of textures in the background. Finally, the last image I took in southern France, and I was there with my friend Nicolas, who already was leading a tour there, and then I just took the train and joined him. And this was at a small kind of water body, and it was really in the last sunlight. So we realized that we got a bit picky with the light. Like an hour before sunset, we really didn't like the light. It was still too harsh for our taste. And I think I took this image like maybe 30 or 40 minutes before sunset, when the sun was really low. And you can imagine this water body is a bit lower. And then on both behind the little egret, you have kind of the shore going a bit up. That's where the sun still hits the shore. That's why you get this golden color. It gets reflected in the water. That's why the whole background in this image is so golden. On the other hand, behind us there was also kind of a shore that went a bit up, and this meant that the sun was already, since it was quite low, it didn't illuminate the egret anymore, which is really not a problem because it's so bright that it's bright enough even without having direct sunlight, and it gave the advantage that there was no problem with harsh shadows or harsh contrasts or anything. And the egret was there just hunting for eels for at least an hour. Just the light got better and better over time, and this is definitely also a situation where I would recommend to go as low as possible. And the second thing is to take a high frame rate, because you just have more positions. You can see the foot, and I really like how the water is kind of between the, again, I'm not sure if toe is the proper word here, but between the feet, how you have a layer of water, which I think looks really cool. And this is something you just get more likely if you set your camera to 20, 30, 40, whatever frame rate it can support. And the second thing is actually also that the eel, it sounds a bit harsh for the eel, but it was still living and trying to fight. So there was also like kind of different head or body positions of the eel, and shooting with 40 frames per second just gave me a lot of options here. And of course I also chose a short shutter speed to really freeze the action, also when there were some water droplets, that they were really in focus. So these are my 10 top pictures that I took in Europe in the last year. I hope you enjoyed the video, that you got something from it. As mentioned before, if you're curious how you can get more out of your Nikon Z or Canon EOS R camera, then please check out the according ebooks. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next year.